Hi, my name's Arjuna Ardagh. I found myself complaining, moaning on social media of late about the choice of political candidates, particularly in the last presidential election. I found myself choosing between two very wealthy people, very connected with big money and special interest. And I wrote on Facebook a little while, a couple of weeks ago, I said, give me a young woman who doesn't take corporate money. It felt like a dream, dream on. And then just a couple of days later, I walked out of my house and I heard a lot of noise in the neighbor's garden, like loudspeakers and microphones. And I strolled in because we're friends, and lo and behold, it was a meeting for the congressional candidate for my political district, California's first district. So I asked the young woman who I met there if she would be willing to talk with me. So I wanted to introduce you today to Aubrey Denny, the Democratic candidate for California's first district.
First of all, just thanks for having me, and so thrilled to be meeting all of your wonderful friends, some of them who I'm sure live in California's first district and some I'm sure don't. But I want everyone to know that as part of my job as the future Congresswoman of our district, I want to be California's first district's storyteller. I want to share what life is like and who the people are and what our struggles and our joys and our challenges are here in the first district with the rest of California and the rest of the country and the rest of the world. So I really see that I'm excited to be talking about the issues that face our district with your friends and with your peeps here today, because we live in this really special part of the world, right? We're the 11 counties in the northeastern part of the state of California, really rural, remote rural in a lot of cases, two major cities with close to 100,000 people, Redding and Chico. But other than that, it's small towns, it's small town rural America, and we have beautiful national forests, beautiful forest land. We have prime ag land. We have a lot of the water that falls in the state of California falls in our district. But the people here, the real people, have really been forgotten and they've been left behind. And 7 out of my 11 counties that I'll be representing are in the 15 poorest counties in the state of California. So the real people are struggling, and their story needs to be told. And so I want your friends and your audience to know that I want to be an advocate for my district, but also I want to share their stories, which is what I hope we get to do today.
Beautiful. And I believe you. I got to tell you, I believe you. I have actually met a lot of politicians and political candidates, and somehow, you can listen to the words, but your heart kind of just also gives you a little response. Like, is this person just saying what they have to say? But I've got to say, this is why I wanted to do this interview. I really actually believe that what you're saying is true, that you care. So let's go through a few things because we've got limited time. Number one, you mentioned a lot of agriculture in our district. Let's talk about farming for a minute. I know farming has changed enormously. When I was a kid, a farm was an ecosystem. It had geese and ducks and lambs and cows, and they were all intermingling. And now we have shifted over to mono farming, and a lot of farmers are beholden to big industries, beholden to big companies, chemical companies. And I know that the suicide rate among farmers is higher than among many other professions. So I know that one of the things you care about a lot, you've been a professor of agriculture at Chico State University. I know you care a lot about farming. You come from a farming family. What do you propose? How do you propose to advocate for our farmers?
Yeah. So I love to start all conversations about all issues with finding the shared common values in the middle of these issues, right? And agriculture is no different, right? And agriculture for me is the most important industry because we all have to eat, right? And we interface directly with the environment, and agriculture has the ability to mitigate climate change. It has all of this going for it. But finding the shared common value when we're talking about farming, it's that everybody want safe, healthy, nutritious food to feed their families. And we value, as a country, especially in Northern California, we value the small farmer and we value the family farmer, and we want to keep the family farmers on their land. and allow family farmers to be able to pass that down generationally. But this consolidation trend that you're referencing, that we've seen in American agriculture over the last 100 years, is a threat. It's a threat to the livelihoods of small family farmers across our district. And every single year it gets harder and harder for farmers to stay on their land, whether that be attacks on their water rights, whether that be trade wars with other countries that are cutting into their profit margins, whether that be an absolute inability to get farm labor because of current immigration policies and practices, whether that be the regulatory burdens and frameworks that we put on our farmers. We're slowly, every single year, eroding their profit margin to the point where they won't be able to continue farming. And so if we value the family farmer, like you're talking about, and we value having local, safe, nutritious food to feed our families, we have to invest in our small and our mid-sized farmers in Northern California. For me, that looks like investing in rural food infrastructure systems. Up here in the North Valley where I live, we don't have any coolers that operate in a cooperative manner. So my local small farmers have to move their food around the valley, using up a whole bunch of extra fuel and a bunch of time, that if we had coolers and processing facilities that could act as a hub or a cooperative, they could keep more of the food dollar in the pocket instead of giving that to the middleman. Additionally, I think we need to be doing a lot more efforts with our conservation services. So NRCS, we can be funding more conservation agents to be working directly with farmers, so we can be replicating the agroecosystems that you're talking about of old. Because not only are those agroecosystems where we're intercropping and we're rotationally grazing and we're running cows through the middle of orchards, not only are those great ecological practices, that diversification also helps farmers make a little bit more money, right? So technical assistance to our farmers. But we really, 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 the things that farmers are going to tell you right now in our part of the world that they need immediate assistance with are certainty in the trade markets, and agricultural labor forces, and certainty of water. And so one thing just to touch on, I know, and I could talk about this forever, but I came from a meeting with some farmers, some walnut farmers, and they said this year has far and away been the worst year for them trying to find labor to harvest. They have 9 people working full time for them year round, because they only need half the year, they only need 4 folks, but they keep them on full time year round, because if they let them go, they wouldn't be able to rehire them. They're paid vacation leave, they have health benefits, they have all of these things that they need to do to keep people, but they still don't have enough labor to harvest their crops. And so the Republicans in Congress who are stopping reasonable immigration bills from coming through are hurting farmers and ranchers in California in a really serious way.
Yeah. I'm really impressed by how deeply you've looked into this. You come from a farming family, right? You grew up on a farm, didn't you? Yeah.
Yeah. I grew up on a farm and I still own a small ag business.
Right. And you've been a professor of agriculture, so you understand farming inside and out. I also wanted to talk a little bit about veterans. I know that our district has a higher percentage of veterans than many other areas. How do you propose to advocate for veterans when you get to Congress?
Thanks for bringing this up. This is a real personal issue for me. It's a heart issue for me. My dad is a disabled Vietnam vet.
Oh, wow.
When he was 20 years old, he was flying helicopters in Vietnam. He was in charge of like 20 men in 4 helicopters and was shot down twice in Vietnam. And he signed up. I mean, he signed up to go. But that experience has altered the course of the rest of his life. So he's 100% disabled with PTSD and has dealt with a lot of the trauma from that experience in a lot of different ways. And in a lot of ways, it really shaped my family growing up, right? And it shaped who I became. And so when I think about our servicemen and women coming back from serving our country, I think about the fact that we've trained them to go to war, and we've trained them to respond to to threats with anger, and we've trained them to always be in control of situations, which are absolutely essential when you're in that situation, right? But then when they come home, we don't necessarily untrain them to do those things. And so as the representative of California's First, which has 8% of our district as veterans, that's
wow.
average, I will be a fierce advocate for wraparound services for our veterans, from transitioning back into civilian life, mental health care, protecting the VA administration from threats of privatization, but also enhancing the VA, making sure that it's not only fully funded, but fully staffed, working with job training programs, career and technical education, housing assistance when need be. Our servicemen and women have given everything for our country. I'm tired of one political party claiming to own patriotism. I believe all of us are patriots, and we all care about our servicemen and women, but we need to put our money where our mouth is. And if we're willing to spend $716 billion on the armed forces, we need to make sure that we are also willing to take care of our veterans when they come home.
It's funny, I've been saying this so much. I really long for political candidates to step forward where I can feel their heart. And it's kind of a little shocking for me to feel somebody who's just, your whole disposition tells me that you care. I want to also ask you, broadening out past veterans to healthcare. We did briefly chat about universal access to healthcare, and that's an issue where there's a whole lot of kind of jumbled misinformation. What I see, I come from England, where when you went to hospital, not only was there not a bill, they didn't even ask your name. It's like, if you could walk, you deserved healthcare. And there was a cashier there, but the cashier was so you could go and get your taxi fare reimbursed. They didn't take money. So basically, healthcare, when I grew up, was a bit like the police or the fire truck. Or the police, when you call the police, you don't say, "Oh, I need a policeman." Well, have you got police insurance? They just come anyway, you see? So that was how I grew up. And there's this myth that if it's like that, it's going to be terrible quality. It's not true. France, Germany, Sweden, Norway, they all have nationalized healthcare. The healthcare standard is much higher than we get in the United States, paying for it. And I know because I've been in both countries. So let's talk a little bit about healthcare.
So imagine my surprise when, about 2 months ago now, a friend of mine walks into my office, downtown Chico, at 8 a.m., keeled over, and says, "Audrey, I think I'm having a heart attack." And I was like, "Get in the car. I'm taking you to the hospital. It's 5 blocks from here. Go. We got to go." And he's like leaning on the desk in the office like this, like barely able to breathe. And he's like, you can't take me. I don't have insurance. This man thought he was going to die, but yet the thought of going bankrupt because he didn't have health insurance was scarier than dying. And luckily he was having a back spasm, and he turned out fine and everything was fine. But like that, for me, encapsulated in that moment, I said, this is why I'm running for Congress. Like, this is ridiculous. The fact that we spend more on healthcare than almost any other nation in our level of development, and yet the healthcare system is structured to give insurance companies and big pharma major profits, and it's not designed to take care of everyday Americans. We're in a crisis. And so absolutely, I think that we need to be working towards a Medicare for all system, making sure that we can focus on prevention. It's going to be cheaper in the long run. We can get good quality care that way. So that's kind of this macro level of healthcare for me. But when you drill down and you look specifically at the first district, we're rural, right? We're remote rural. Did you know that we have 2 counties where if I was pregnant, I could not deliver a baby? 2 of my 11 counties. If I lived in Modoc County, I'd have to go to Oregon or to Redding to have a baby. And to me, that is mind-blowing.
You can't have it at home with a midwife?
You can't. There's not like a hospital where you could go.
Okay.
Because the hospitals, to have hospitals, but you'd have to have an anesthesiologist.
Yeah.
on call 24 hours a day, and that is expensive. And so they legally can't deliver babies. I mean, in an emergency, if there's a baby coming out of you, they'll catch it. Getting a little graphic here.
No, but if there's complications, then you're in real trouble.
You're in real trouble, right? And so for me, when we look at the first district we only have 2 Planned Parenthood clinics in our whole district, right? It's a really, really just an access issue. So we need to be looking at, besides kind of fixing the overall healthcare system, we need to be looking at investing in our federally qualified rural health centers. We need to be looking at recruiting doctors and nurses from our areas who want to stay in our areas and raise their families in our areas. We need to be looking at telehealth options, telemedicine, and really looking at kind of community health models that have been successful in other rural places to make sure that every person in our district, no matter how much money they have in their pocketbook, do people say pocketbook? They don't.
Yeah, that's good.
Say that, okay. Wallets, pocket, like a 95-year-old woman pocketbook. But no, we have to make sure that we look at the unique rural ramifications too, to make sure that we're getting our bases covered.
Got it. Okay, brilliant. I'm keeping an eye on the time. There's a few more things. So you're going to be representing us. You're going to be representing us. You are going to be representing us. It has to be. So you're going to be what?
I will be the first congresswoman of California's first district.
Yeah, there you go. You're going to be representing us, but you're not only going to be representing us in the first district, you're also going to be a voting person in Congress. You're going to be voting on other issues as well. So let's talk about a few things that are of concern to many people. So one, of course, is gun control and gun rights. You know, this is a big contentious issue. There was this massive march on Washington that touched me so deeply, where it was young people advocating, like, we've got to do something to rein this in. There is a kind of, obviously the NRA is a powerful lobbying force, but there are countries that had a lot of gun violence previously, like Australia. They simply shut down a lot of access to guns and the violence went way down. What is your position on gun control and how will you vote on that issue when you're in Congress?
That's a great question. And so I want to start again with the shared common value on this, is that nobody wants innocent lives taken at the hands of guns, right? Not gun owners, not anybody. And we especially not at schools, right? And so for me, that's a shared common value. But also looking at our part of the world, we have a lot of hunters, farmers and ranchers and sports enthusiasts up here who safely and responsibly use firearms. And so for me, there's a balance to be found there. But almost every single person that I've talked to in the hunter, farmer, rancher, sports enthusiast category believes in safety training, gun safety legislation. And the fact of the matter, in California, as a state, we have some of the strictest gun safety legislation in the nation. Between 2006 and 2016, our gun violence death rate dropped by 56%.
Wow.
The rest of the country that same time only dropped by 16%. So we're doing something right here, but unless we have representatives in Washington, D.C. with the political courage to stand up to the NRA and stand up to the gun lobby, those gun safety rules and laws will be slowly chipped away at in the House of Representatives.
Do you have that courage, Aubrey?
I do. Concealed carry reciprocity is one of those examples, right? Saying, if I've got concealed carry in one state, that means I can get concealed carry anywhere. And that's one of the pieces of legislation that they're trying to get through that will erode our gun safety standards. So not only will I be a voice against pieces of legislation like that, I'll also be a voice for trying to help get some federal legislation to bring other states up to where we are at California's level, right? We need to do things like simple, basic things like ban bump stocks and binary triggers, close the gun show loophole, get truly universal background checks, gun violence protection orders, where if I'm worried that a family member of mine who I know has firearms is a danger to himself or others, I can go to a judge and say, hey, sign this order and take these firearms away from this person, they're dangerous. Mm-hmm. And those are the kind of things that it just doesn't make sense that they're not already enacted in federal legislation until you follow the money and realize how many of our representatives are bought and paid for by the NRA.
Well, let's segue right there and talk about the money. You know, it appears on the surface like our country is incredibly divided between two sets of values, Democrat and Republican. But where I've noticed people agree is we don't want politics dominated by corrupt politicians who are controlled by special interest and big money. Of course, there's a dispute about which side is more corrupt, but the corruption itself, everyone agrees, is not a good thing. So what I feel we need is candidates who are willing to promise from the very get-go as their platform to not take bribes.
Absolutely. From day one of this campaign, I have said I will not take corporate money, corporate PAC money. That was what earned me the Justice Democrat, or one of the key things that earned me the Justice Democrat endorsement. But I've also signed Move to Amend to overturn Citizens United. We can't get anything done until we get representatives who are not bought and paid for by special interests. And so I pledge to you now, just like I pledge every single day of this campaign, that when I am elected, I will only be beholden to and responsible to the people who live in this district. Honestly, whether you voted for me or not, right? But I will be beholden to the people in this district. We've created a movement around that, right? Because just like you said, Republicans, Democrats, a lot of us agree on this issue that we have to get money out of politics to make real and lasting change. And so I've raised almost $450,000 so far from individual donors all over the state, mostly in our district, but people have gotten excited about our race from around the state and around the nation and have been chipping in to fund this campaign. But it's just, it comes down to real people taking a stand. And when we say enough's enough, our votes are speech. You know, money isn't speech, corporations aren't people, but when we vote, that is a form of speech. And so we just need to vote across the country, vote in a new generation of leaders who aren't bought and paid for.
Yes. I got my pen.
Yes.
I've got my checkbook. Who do I make the check out to, Aubrey?
Audrey Denny for Congress. AUDREYDENNEY for Congress. Wow.
It's in the mail. Okay.
Thank you.
Yeah, and I hope everybody listening will do the same thing, because you know the challenge that a candidate with integrity faces like this is they're up against corrupt money. They're up against the big pharma, the big chemical companies, the big fertilizer companies. They're up against a lot of dirty money, and here's somebody clean who actually the only way that she's going to be able to stand up against the big dragon is actually with our money. So I've just written a check, and I hope you will too. So I know I can feel that you're a good person with a good heart, and you don't like to mudsling, but I think we just do need to dwell for a moment upon the man you're up against. So I can do the dirty talking if you like, and save you doing it. But I did actually meet with Doug LaMalfa a year or two ago. One of the notable things was I disagreed with a lot of what he had to say. I didn't really get a chance to express myself, so I wrote to him afterwards. I didn't get any reply to my letter. I actually then wrote to him through the local newspaper. I wrote an open letter to him in the newspaper, actually asking him to pay attention to what 3,000 people in that meeting had been saying to his face. I got not even an acknowledgement to a letter in the newspaper. So at least for me, I got the sense, here's somebody really out of touch with us. And the other thing that, you know, deeply disturbs me, and I'm going to say this, you don't need to comment unless you want to, but the other thing that deeply disturbs me about Doug LaMalfa is that he's dating Donald Trump. They've been going steady for a while. And I mean, they're kind of hand in glove. He supports Donald Trump's every move, as far as I understand it. Correct me if I'm wrong. And really, I could never vote for that. You know, so tell me, first of all, you know, do you have anything to say about how you're different from our current representative? And do you have anything to say about any opinion you want to about our current president?
Yeah, absolutely. So I am running against, and for those of you outside of the district, I'm running against an entrenched Republican incumbent who votes alongside the president's agenda 96% of the time, who has been in public office since I graduated from high school. He is a climate denier who consistently tries to take away our reproductive freedom and women's health care. He voted to take away our health care and give massive tax cuts to the wealthiest among us, himself included, while threatening our Medicare and Social Security. And if that wasn't enough to fire someone for their job, I would also just reference exactly what you said. He is inaccessible. People will write to him, people call him, they don't get responses. He doesn't come to town halls. When he does, he doesn't. He's not showing up to learn and listen about issues. And so the time has come for him to retire, and I am pleased to be running a strong campaign that is going to give him the opportunity to retire and give us the opportunity to get better representation. Because the fact of the matter is we deserve better. We deserve someone who will show up for us the same way that we show up for our friends and our neighbors every day.
Any comments on Doug LaMalfa's BFF, Donald?
You know, when President Trump was elected in November of 2016, that was one of the pivotal moments of my life that I realized that I needed to get more involved, and that structural injustices weren't going to solve themselves, especially when we have the rich and the powerful and the corrupt in charge of the country. Structural injustices won't fix themselves. And so that was really a kick in the pants to me as a early 30s woman. I got an IUD for the first time in my life the week after Donald Trump was elected president, because I was terrified that I was going to lose access to birth control. Think about that. Think about that for a second, that in 2018, a 30-something-year-old professional woman is making reproductive health decisions based on who is sitting in the Oval Office. That is terrifying. I can also tell you that I, along with many other people in our great country, our nation, are anxiously awaiting Special Counsel Robert Mueller's report, and anxiously awaiting the opportunity to learn if and how experts say our president has obstructed justice. Well, I'm excited to learn exactly what that is. And I'll tell you what, I will swear to you here and now that whether it be a Republican president or a Democratic president, if a president has broken the law of the land, they have to be held accountable. And yeah, they have to be held accountable, because these are not partisan issues. It is time for us to move past this polarization and this partisanship, and put love of country before love of party and before love of anything else. Because what we're doing here is fighting for the sanctity of our democracy. And when corruption wins the day, democracy loses.
Wow. Okay. I want to finish. Thank you. I want to finish today just with two tiny stories, and then I've got to let you go. So the first story, because these are connected, these two stories. The first story is when we first came to this area, my kids needed to have a new school. And so I was used to school and what I had been brought up as in school, and I knew what school was, and I knew what the relationship with the teacher usually is. The teacher stands at the front and points at the board and everyone repeats. And I went to a tour of our local school, and I walked into one particular classroom where the teacher was sitting on the desk, not behind it, but on the desk, with his legs kind of hanging over the edge. And he was asking the students, what do you think about this? This was actually a 7th grade class. What do you think about this? What about that? What do you think about that? Drawing out their opinions. And I swear to God, I cried. I just stood there and tears started pouring down my face. And the reason I cried was, this is actually what I've always longed the teacher would be. It was just latent in my consciousness. I never saw it, but it was what I longed for. And all that longing bubbled to the surface when I saw a teacher actually embody what I want a teacher to be. And now I'm going to flash forward to, I can't remember when it was, a couple of days ago, when I stumbled into Barbara's, my dear heart's garden, where you were, and I watched you listening to people. And I know what real listening looks like. I know what someone looks like when they're really listening, not just with their brain, but with their heart. And I saw you hugging people one after the other. And it wasn't just a kind of, photo op hug. It was a real warm hug. And I just watched the expression on your face. And I tell you, that's why I asked you, can we talk like this? Because a similar thing happened to me than when I went to that school. A longing was fulfilled. It's like, this is what I've always wanted a political candidate to be like. Somebody real, somebody who cares, somebody who's in service, not in self-interest, and someone who holds high integrity and high values around just business as usual. So thank you for showing up. I'm still not quite sure if I'm dreaming, but you certainly have my full support, and I'm going to make sure as many of my friends as possible know about who you are and what you represent. Any final words?
Just thank you. The biggest gifts of this journey so far has been getting to meet amazing people all over my district that I can now count as friends, and that I will soon be able to count as constituents. So thank you. Thanks for being you. I appreciate you.